that way. One metric that we're really looking at the junior high school is the chronic absenteeism. And our elementary rate there was 12%, but our junior high school rate was 26.5%. So that's something that we've really tried to focus on, even starting this school year. That means, if you're chronically absent, that means you miss 17 and a half or more days. And that's really a lot of school days. So we've got a new program that we're targeting the standout students, and we're trying to set criteria for attendance, discipline, grades, and participation in extracurricular activities. And for the students who meet that criteria every quarter, they're recognized publicly and they get prizes. So we're really trying to point that out to our families and our community that we kind of need their help on that part of it.
Yeah, that's one thing that continues to come up, whether it's bigger districts like like Monticello, Clinton, Lincoln, those sorts of things, or smaller districts like Cerro Gordo, Hayworth. We're hearing so much about the chronic absenteeism from students. Where does that stem from, Dr. Weidner? Why are students not showing up for class these days?
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of a COVID hangover to some extent, because I think that we really saw a decline after COVID. But I also think part of it is that sometimes families go on vacations during the school year. And I know I have a family too. I know it's hard to find a time that's good for everyone with work and everything else. But, if a kid has the flu and misses 5 days and then they go on a family vacation, it's easier than it seems to really get up past that threshold of the chronic absences. So it's just something that we don't just believe in it because it's on this report card, but we know that having our students in school has a positive impact on their academic outcomes. So we want them here regardless of the report card.
Mm-hmm. Sure. When it comes to the report card itself, Dr. Weidner, we go back to the tangibles versus the intangible things. You talked about things like culture, happiness of your staff and your students, their willingness to come to school, those sorts of things. What other intangible things does the school report card not show that you feel like shows the success of Cerro Gordo schools?
Well, I think that we have a great school climate here. One of the things that, as a new person, I've been really impressed with is whenever I go to sporting events here, we have a section of teachers who are coming and supporting the kids. And these are not people who have their own children playing in the games. They're here watching their students, and they're not required to do that, and they're doing it by choice. And I think that's been a really neat thing. We just have a really positive atmosphere where you'll see teachers doing all kinds of different things and taking on different roles. And that's what it takes in a small school to keep everything going. So I'm really proud of our dual credit offerings, our opportunities that our kids have to go to Heartland Tech Academy and go over to Richland and take advantage of those programs. So a lot of our students end up with college credit and even up to an associate's degree when they're done at Cerro Gordo. So for our size, we have a lot of opportunities for our kids.
When it comes to Dr. Weidner, just the report card itself, what are things in the report card that you feel maybe the state emphasizes that don't, always reflect, how a school district might be doing? Does that make any sense?
Sure, absolutely. And it's a little bit different for the elementary school versus the high school. The elementary school is more based on student test scores and the students' growth on tests. But not all elementary students take those tests. So the whole school is rated based on the third, fourth, and fifth graders' performance on that. In terms of the high school, the biggest thing for the high school is the graduation rate. So they're looking at students who enter in ninth grade and what percentage of those students graduate. So if you have a couple of kids that don't finish, that really impacts the whole rating for your entire school. So the test scores and the proficiency ratings matter much less at the junior high school. That graduation rate is almost half of what they count. And then the chronic absenteeism is 20%. So test scores are much lower in weight at the high school level. Mm-hmm. We're also kind of unique because we are a junior high school. So most schools get a rating for their junior high and their high school, but ours are kind of lumped together.
Dr. Emily Weidner is the superintendent of Cerro Gordo Schools, my guest on the phone here for this morning. Dr. Weidner, when it comes to the report card itself, was there anything, and being your first year, I'm just kind of curious, like, was there anything you were aware of coming into Cerro Gordo Schools where when it came out, you said, okay, we're going to really watch for these numbers, or I'm just kind of getting an overview of what we have going on, and we'll kind of take a 10,000 foot approach and say, okay, this is what the data tells us. Now let's dial in on these things. Like, how did you approach your first report card there in Cerro Gordo?
Sure. One of the things that stood out to me was that the ELA scores looked great. Science scores were good. Math scores were the area that I targeted for needing improvement. And that was something that they were already working on before I got here. Going into this school year, the elementary purchased all new math curriculum. The junior high school has added math RTI, or response to intervention, so that those students at the upper grade levels can get a chance to work on their math during kind of a homeroom time during the day. We also have math interventionists at the elementary school now. So that is something where we're pretty good comparatively, but we definitely want to be better in math. So that's an area that we're going to target.
Mm-hmm. Sure. In terms of just what the data told you that was good, from whether it was, again, maybe building specific things or just, areas where Cerro Gordo has improved that you've seen, watching the progression of data, from what you've been able to assess so far, was there an area that you felt, or things that you felt the report card showed that were good for Cerro Gordo schools from that perspective?
Absolutely. Yes. Our English language arts scores look great and have consistently looked great. So that's, I think, an area of strength for us. That we want to kind of continue pushing, but the math is where we need a little bit of improvement. So we're solid in the ELA and the science. Those scores look great. Definitely something we're always going to be working on, but the math will be what we're targeting.
Very good. And that testing piece there, Dr. Weidner, I know that's something that's just for a long time been kind of, something that superintendents have said, yeah, you have to test and we need to know, the progression of our students, but sometimes testing isn't always, that one piece. I'm sure that one thing that always shows, the success of a student. I'm sure you've experienced that in your time, not only in administration, but teaching and those sorts of things. How about just your history on that line of thinking?
Absolutely. It's very tricky because these tests mean an awful lot to the adults in the school buildings, but they don't count for anything for the kids, at least at the younger grades. The teachers encourage them to do their best and put forth their best effort, but there's no grade or anything like that for the students. At the high school level, the SAT does matter, but even to apply for college now, you don't necessarily have to include your SAT scores if you don't want to. So it's taking a whole school and evaluating it based on a test that some students at some grade levels take, and whether they do their very best on it is kind of up to the individual student. And I really think that most students do try their best on it. I don't think that's a major issue, but it is a one day out of the whole school year that they're taking a test that we're kind of evaluated on,
right?
In terms of how well we're doing. So
Yep.
that can be hard to handle at times.
No question. Very good. Dr. Weidner, anything else on the report card we didn't touch on you want to put out there?
I'm very proud of how we did, and I think we've done a good job of celebrating where we can and then identifying what we need to work on.
Dr. Emily Weidner, superintendent of Cerro Gordo Schools, my guest on the phone. More to come with her on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW. Let's check the opening numbers now at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Monday. Jim Taylor on the RFD Radio Network. Corn starting the day slightly lower, beans higher, and wheat slightly lower. December corn opening 462.25, down 1 3/4. March corn down 1 1/4, 477 3/4, and May corn 487.5, down a penny. November beans starting this Monday 1340, up 6.5. January beans up 9.5, 1357. March beans underway on this Monday, 1370, up 9 1/4. December wheat down 2 1/4, 573. March wheat 596 3/4, down 2.5. May wheat 612 1/4, down 2.5. December bean meal, $4.57.70. That's up $8.30. And December bean oil, $50.25, down 95 cents. Opening numbers at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Monday. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network.
Looking for Chevrolet inventory? This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. We have the all-new Chevrolet Trax, Blazer, and Trailblazers coming. Plus, several Chevrolet Equinoxes and Traverses are here. This month, take advantage of extra $1,000 trade-in assistance on your trade. There's always a need for quality trades here at Baum's. BaumChevyBuick.com. Right from the start.
Warner Hospital and Health Services in Clinton. CEO Paul Scarron reminding you our walk-in clinic inside our family medicine building will treat your flu symptoms without an appointment. Find out more by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
For the latest in Central Illinois agricultural news, visit IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Get updated information on markets, weather, ag news, local interviews with NAFB farm broadcaster Jared White, and much, much more. All at IllinoisFarmRadio.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Again, my guest on the phone, Dr. Emily Weidner, Superintendent of Cerro Gordo Schools, on the phone with us here for today. Dr. Weidner, let's talk e-learning and Cerro Gordo getting a policy regarding e-learning here. What's going on? What's this all about?
Well, as I talk to students of mine who have graduated in the past, we find that many of them are taking jobs that work remotely. They work from home in many fields. They have a combination of remote and in-person work. That's become very common since the COVID pandemic. And it's also very normal for college courses. You know, they work online or with synchronous or asynchronous classes. So we're kind of moving past the idea that when we have snow or ice or bad weather that we have to shut school down totally. So like many other districts, we've developed a remote learning or an e-learning plan so that we can continue to have school on days where we can't actually safely come to the buildings. For our junior high students, it's pretty easy to transition to this because they're all very well versed in Google Classroom and the technology. But for our younger students, it's a little bit more of a challenge. So we've kind of developed a little bit of a hybrid plan where our youngest elementary students will have paper packets, and then we'll transition to Google Classroom and completely online learning starting in 4th grade.
Dr. Weidner, when it comes to e-learning, how extensive do you want this to be in terms of, in the event that you need to use it? Let's say we get a storm that is going to keep Cerro Gordo schools out of the classroom for 2, maybe 3 days. That seems rare anymore, given the ability of crews to, weather crews to predict what the weather's going to be, prepare for that from a streets perspective, all those things. I mean, 2 to 3 days out of school for one weather event feels pretty rare anymore. But in the event it happens, again, how extensive do you want this plan to be in Cerro Gordo schools? Like, how much do you want to utilize it over a long period of time if need be?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So I think that there are a lot of people who still really love traditional snow days, and I do too. So I think there will be times that regular snow days will be used. I look at the e-learning day as more of a time when we know pretty well in advance that we're going to have to be out of school. And so our teachers have time to prepare the kids and prepare the families that, we're going to be likely e-learning on this upcoming day when there's a big predicted snowfall. So we wouldn't want to kind of spring it on everyone at the last second, because we would have to send some technology home with students, including our younger students too. So there would need to be some advance notice of it, especially as we started out. I think we'll get better at it as time goes on. But you do have, those years, I think probably 7 to 10 years ago, we had a school year where we kept having really cold temperatures, and a lot of districts went out for 7 or 9 days. For snow days, and then you're looking at going into the summer. So that's what we'd like to avoid is having to extend the school year further into the summer. So I think there's some opportunity to still have school and still give a good educational product to our students and families without having to extend the school year. And then you're looking at changing the graduation date and things like that that can become problematic. So it just makes good sense to me. And I've had experience with it in previous districts where it worked really well for students, teachers, and families.
Makes a lot of sense. Certainly does. And well explained, I might add as well. Dr. Weidner, talk to me then a little bit about, obviously to make an e-learning day happen, perhaps there's a weather event that pops up that we weren't anticipating, or a weather event comes around and it ends up being much worse than anticipated. And so last minute, you've got to call for an e-learning day or something of that nature. And, obviously maybe students have to have materials handy to make that happen. How about the infrastructure, the things in place to make an e-learning day possible right now, from technology to communication, all those things? How about that?
Sure. Yeah, there is a lot more work to it than there would probably appear from the outside, but we sent home a survey, an online survey to parents, to just kind of gauge what technology they already had, what their students' comfort level was with getting online and, getting into a Google Meet or a Zoom on their own. So we could have some information about what families might be dealing with in advance. Our junior high and high school students all already have Chromebooks that belong to the school that they carry back and forth to school and home every day. So that makes it pretty simple for them. But our 4th and 5th graders will have the opportunity to check out a Chromebook in the event of a weather scenario like this. So that would require a little bit of planning ahead of time. But the good news is we're having our school board hearing on the remote learning plan this week. And then if that passes, then we have 30 days before we could use one of these, even if we wanted to, just by the ISB guidelines. So we have a lot of time to kind of prep and front load information, and for the teachers to get lessons and packets and things like that ready. So we have plenty of time to make sure that we do it correctly and get all the good communication and information out there to people.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of times these things are not unexpected anymore. And so it's easy to say, okay, this is a very real possibility that we're not going to be in school tomorrow. We might not be in school the next day. So let's plan now for what needs to be in place so we can do, learning from home and those sorts of things. And Dr. Weidner, I could ask you a few more things about that, but we'll wrap up that conversation there and move along and talk about just things happening with your students outside of the classroom, those extracurricular things. And, it felt like a really exciting fall sports season from a lot of programs around the area. How about your students and their successes this past fall?
Yeah, we just wrapped up our fall sports. We had 2 Cerro Gordo Bumet athletes who ran in the state cross country meet, so that was very exciting. Will Fusen placed 12th overall as a sophomore with a time of 15:12, so that was very impressive. And then our senior Dylan Howell placed 35th in his last season. One of the things that really impressed me, I was able to go watch the boys run in Bumet on their senior night, and both of those boys are truly outstanding runners. We have a lot of great runners on that team. But what stood out to me most was in that race, Dylan, who's our senior, spent most of the race coaching another runner on his team and helping that runner to pace himself, stayed with him till the end and helped him push himself further. And it's really what sports are about to me, just developing those leadership skills and teamwork. And it was just a really neat moment. So kudos to them for a great season, both those boys and the team overall. Our volleyball program had an amazing season. Funny story about them, back in August, right after I started, our athletic director asked me if I wanted to play in a scrimmage against them at our, scrimmage night in front of the community. And I said, sure, that sounds like fun. But I'm telling you now, if I had known then how good these girls were, I never would have agreed to it. I'm just glad that they didn't spike the ball off my head or something. They're just a phenomenal team. They ended up 29-9.
Oh, wow.
That was the season. That's a record for wins in a season. They won the first regional championship in our program history. Allie Walker's a senior. She set the record for kills in a game, and then she broke it later in the season. She also set the record for kills in a season and career, so that was outstanding.
Dr. Weidner, I don't mean to do this to you. I hate doing this. I got to let you go for the morning, but we appreciate you making time for us as always. Dr. Emily Weidner, Cerro Gordo School Superintendent. Network News is now.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM W222 BG Clinton, 106.5 FM W293 DJ Normal Bloomington.
Ticking toward a potential government shutdown. Government funding runs out at midnight Friday.